Millions of years ago, the world ended in fire. A blazing asteroid struck the Earth with unimaginable force, turning thriving jungles into burning wastelands within minutes. The sky glowed red as shockwaves raced across continents, oceans rose into monstrous walls of water, and forests that had stood for millions of years vanished in a single violent moment. But the true horror of extinction did not happen instantly. It began in the silent days that followed. As the flames slowly faded, a thick curtain of ash and dust covered the planet, blocking the sunlight and plunging Earth into a cold, endless twilight. The once warm air turned bitter and sharp, carrying the scent of smoke and destruction across empty valleys. Massive dinosaurs that had ruled the land with unmatched strength now wandered through a dying world, confused and weakened. Rivers became clogged with debris, plants withered without light, and food grew scarce. Hunger spread like an invisible predator. Herds that once moved with confidence now struggled to survive, their heavy footsteps slower with each passing day. Predators that had dominated the food chain found themselves facing an enemy they could not fight, the collapse of life itself. In the darkened skies above, strange storms formed, releasing freezing rains and sudden flashes of lightning that illuminated the ruins of an ancient empire. Volcanoes awakened across distant horizons, adding more ash to an atmosphere already choked with dust. The ground trembled unpredictably, reminding every creature that the planet itself was still in pain. One young dinosaur, separated from its herd during the chaos, wandered through a silent forest where the trees stood blackened like shadows frozen in time. It searched desperately for signs of life, calling out into the cold wind, but only echoes returned. Days turned into weeks, and the temperature continued to fall. Frost crept across the land, covering fallen leaves and lifeless bodies in a pale, ghostly layer. Years passed in a world that no longer remembered the thunder of giant footsteps. The frozen silence that followed the Great Extinction slowly began to break as weak sunlight finally returned through thinning clouds of dust. Across the barren landscapes, small patches of green life pushed their way through cracked soil, bringing the first fragile signs of hope to a planet that had nearly died. The massive skeletons of ancient dinosaurs lay scattered across valleys and shorelines, slowly becoming part of the Earth itself. Winds carried fine particles of ash across endless plains, shaping dunes around the remains of a forgotten empire. In this new and unfamiliar world, survival belonged not to the strongest, but to the most adaptable. Small feathered creatures darted between rocks and fallen trees, their sharp eyes constantly searching for danger. They were faster, lighter, and able to live on far less food than the giants that had once dominated the land. As temperatures gradually stabilized, strange new ecosystems began to form. Dense forests unlike anything from the age of dinosaurs started to grow, filled with plants that thrived in cooler climates. Rivers carved new paths through the reshaped continents, and fresh water brought life back to valleys that had long remained silent. Mammal-like animals, once hiding in the shadows of prehistoric predators, now explored the open world with growing confidence. Nights were no longer filled with distant roars, but with unfamiliar sounds of creatures testing their place in a changing environment. Over thousands of years, evolution accelerated in ways never seen before. The memory of the asteroid faded from the skies, but its impact was written into every living organism that followed. Mountains rose where seas once existed, climates shifted again, and continents slowly drifted toward the positions we recognize today. As centuries slowly turned into millennia, the scars left by the Great Extinction began to transform into the foundations of a new world. The frozen wastelands softened under the return of warmer winds, and the gray skies that once blocked the sun gradually gave way to glowing horizons filled with golden light. Life, stubborn and relentless, continued to rise from the ruins. Vast plains that had once been graveyards of ancient giants now became fields of fresh vegetation, stretching farther than any surviving creature could remember. The silence that followed the disappearance of the dinosaurs was eventually replaced by unfamiliar sounds, the quick footsteps of smaller animals, the fluttering wings of early birds testing the open skies, and the quiet movements of mammals emerging from hidden burrows. These new survivors did not rely on size or brute strength. Instead, they relied on speed, awareness, and the ability to adapt to an unpredictable environment. Their world was still dangerous, filled with violent storms and shifting climates, but it was also filled with opportunity. Forests grew denser than ever before, covering the land with layers of green life that absorbed the sunlight once again pouring onto the surface of the planet. Rivers sparkled with renewed energy as rainfall patterns stabilized, carving deep valleys that would one day become the landscapes of future civilizations. In distant regions, volcanoes that had once spread devastation now created fertile soil, allowing ecosystems to expand in ways unseen during the reign of the dinosaurs. Over thousands of generations, evolution began shaping creatures that could think, learn, and cooperate in more complex ways. Eyes adapted to see better in changing light conditions, limbs became more efficient for climbing, running, or flying, and brains slowly increased in size, unlocking new survival strategies. The Earth itself continued its endless motion, continents drifting apart, oceans reshaping coastlines, and mountains rising toward the clouds. Each change rewrote the story of life in subtle but powerful ways. The memory of the ancient asteroid impact faded from the living world, yet its influence remained hidden in the balance of nature. Without that catastrophic moment, the dominance of massive reptiles might have continued indefinitely. Instead, a fragile chain of events set the stage for a future no creature of the prehistoric age could have imagined.